Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom with our host, Bob Olson, who will now introduce today's show and speaker.
WCAT Radio presents The Messenger with messages of things that are happening in the Catholic Church. And here's our host, Tony Szalkiewicz. Welcome, Tony Szalkiewicz, The Messenger.
Hi, Bob. Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good. Good to have you back on. And you have a guest tonight.
Thank you. I do have a guest. His name is Bob Sizemore, and he's going to be speaking about his new book titled The Franciscan Desert Pack, a story of interspecies communication. Should be interesting. But before we get started, there's one thing I wanted to bring out to our listeners, and that's the big division that's occurring throughout the world. One may look at it as division between government and the people, but really it's a spiritual warfare that's occurring between the evil one and righteous people. So people should be aware of that, and they should look up, get on the internet, look up different prophecies that are occurring throughout the world. They seem to be connecting. That's the best explanation I can give at this point. So with that, I'd like to introduce Bob Sizemore. Bob is a retired public schools teacher, also taught at the University of Quinnipiac, and he's now affiliated with Holy Apostles in Cromwell, Connecticut. He's published 2 books, one on MacArthur, which is a fiction, and the other book he's going to discuss is The Franciscan Desert Pack. So with that introduction, Bob, you're on.
Yes. Thank you very much, Tony. And Bob, thank you also. The Franciscan Desert Pack is meant to be something that sort of causes you to pique your interest. It is about a pack. Normally we associate the word pack with dogs, and it is about a dog pack, but it's also something much bigger than that. It's about interspecies communication and how a man has this pack and how they all begin to communicate, especially when another dog comes in to lead the pack, whose name is Jack. And coincidentally, Jack is our dog here at home. So we didn't have to go far for good actors, you know. Anyway, this is historical fiction. I take the facts of history and then I weave them into a fictional story. I want to emphasize the word weave because this is a very tightly woven book. I might tell our listeners that I am a therapist and a spiritual director and a Third Order Franciscan. So there are elements of those 3 areas within my book. The book starts with a man named Fritz who is in Rommel's Tank Corps in El Alamein in World War II. And that would be the Second Battle of El Alamein, October to November of 1942. And he is facing Montgomery's forces. And Fritz, now I'm sure a lot of our listeners remember that El Alamein is in North Africa. It's a desert area. And Fritz is visited at night in a dream, and then when he wakes up, he sees the figure also by St. Anthony of the Desert, who is a very famous desert saint. There were many people who fled to the desert to guarantee their eternity, if you will, and pray. And St. Anthony of the Desert was one of the most famous, who lived in Alexandria, Egypt, about 60 miles away from where Fritz was. And Fritz was told that if he was willing to devote his whole life to God he would be preserved from death the next day when they fought the British. And so he had to commit his whole life to God, totally. And sure enough, he was guaranteed life and spent time at a British POW camp for at least 3 years, and then was released after the war and decided to go to the United States. I might also mention that he was already a secular Franciscan, as were his parents, who both died in the bombings of Hamburg, Germany. So he came to the United States, and as he traveled across the United States, he helped to bring in more Franciscans to the Third Order groups that he became associated with. And finally, he ended up in the Baja in California. He was looking for a desert region and found one. And he was very happy there. He made his own building to live in, which resembled a German Tiger tank, and he put desert netting over it so people from the air could not see him, etc. And then he decided to, he slowly gathered a number of German short-hair pointer mixes around him. He found them in the desert. People had let them loose. And one day, he was going to the country store nearby, and he encountered Jack, who was a much different kind of dog, much smaller dog. And Jack took a liking to Fritz and just followed him home, basically. Now, I have to emphasize that this is a desert area, and that's important because the desert has great meaning in spiritual direction. The desert as a place of living, but also as a state of being. The desert is the dry period that all of us go through, every now and then. So this story becomes then an allegory, which is a story with an underlying meaning as well as a literal one. And it becomes layered as much as we are layered. We're like onions. We're all layered. We have different parts of ourselves, and some much deeper than others. What happens then is they encounter different situations, but one day they were walking, Jack and Fritz were walking along, and they ran into a place in the desert which they called the chapel. And when they went into the place, they found that 3 Franciscan, 2 brothers and 1 priest, had decided to live there in the desert, much as the desert fathers and mothers lived in the desert in Egypt, etc. So again, I'm bringing back the whole idea of going into the desert to get away from things. And these people had migrated there from California under now Saint Juniper Serra, who is well known as somebody who's helped to settle California for the Franciscans. I might also add that Fritz has many, many of the characteristics of Franciscans, namely forgiveness, humility, and empathy with people, and even in this case, dogs. So they find an altar there and statues and a monstrance, etc., and they decide to go back to tell the rest of the dogs, etc., and when they get back, they encounter more people, and one of them is the central character of my stories. There are actually 3 books. This is the 2nd book of my series, and the central person that they meet is Tony Daldo, which is the name of my great-uncle, my grandmother's brother who died a long time ago. And Tony Dallo is a psychologist, so I sort of make him my alter ego here. And they find that there is another group of people who are building large enclosures to imprison people in the future, and they call that group the Raptors. And obviously there's going to be some kind of conflict there sooner or later. Well, to make a very long story shorter, Fritz realizes that where they are now is just too exposed, in too much close proximity to the Raptors. So he decides that he's going to get everybody, including some children that they have encountered, to the chapel to get to a place deeper in the mountains and desert to be safe. But at that time, he was previously told by God or by St. Anthony of the Desert that he would be allowed to live to age 95. And it was at this time that he turned 95, and he was about to die, and many saints came to visit him, and St. John the Baptist came and led him up a stairway that materialized and said to Fritz, "Let's go up and see the face of God." So Fritz dies, and Jack has been trained in so many ways in German fashion, certainly the way Rommel did it, but also through repetition to become head of the pack. Fritz was expecting a person to head the pack after himself, but he ended up with Jack, who was, a savant, a very smart dog. And the story goes on from there, but the message the underlying message that I wanted to give to the readers is that we have to go deeper into the desert. We have to find our own chapel. And Tony was talking about division. Here, I'm talking more so about union. And if we're going to have union with God, we've got to find that deep place in our desert where we can get away and be closer to God. One final thought is that in spiritual direction, it is said, where, as in the desert, where there is nothing, that is precisely where God is. So all of this is designed to be a teaching tale for folks, but in a way that really makes you think and gives you something to ponder as you go through this. So with that, Tony, I think I'll give you the reins. How's that?
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And you're right about the inner soul trying to find God within. That's right. True. That's the unity one is always striving to do, or at least one should start doing it, especially today. Because the disunity is the big spiritual battle between Satan and good forces that are occurring today.
Well, wherever there is confusion, that's where the battle is, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And, John of the Cross, when you're talking about the desert, it reminded me of Mother Teresa. She said her whole life was basically in the desert.
Yes, she did. Which also brings up another thought, and that is when you're in pain, it doesn't mean you're in the wrong place,
Exactly.
I mean, we're spending part of our purgatory on earth, and that's not such a bad thing.
No. You're right. So what did you think, Bob?
Yeah, that's quite a story. How did you say this is the second book?
It is. The first one is called Fort Douglas, A Final Word on the Korean War. And basically, I talk about Tony Daldo growing up, which has, a lot of the episodes I experienced myself. But then I gravitate to the POWs of the Korean War, which were approximately 800 in number. and I have them being held captive for propaganda reasons, and I talk about how that emerges. The third book, which I'm almost finished with now, is also set in the Baja, but this is all about post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's why I say the second book is the most spiritual I've written. And the three together constitute a trilogy.
Well, yeah, and I have to admit, Bob, that Bob Sizemore's book is it is the first one about for Douglas, A Final Word on the Korean War. I called him up after reading it, and I says, it took him, what, Bob, I think it was 10 years for you to write it?
8 years.
8 years for you to write it. And I kind of said, I yelled at him, I says, why'd you end it so soon? Because the reading was really interesting. And all of a sudden at the end, it's like crumbed into a little can, But it's an excellent book. It's an excellent book. I wish you had stretched it out a little more.
You have to understand that. You have to understand it took me 8 years so the ink got dry in the pen. I had to stop there.
Well, it's interesting.
It takes time, I'll tell you.
It's interesting that you bring that up because one of my main jobs when I was in the Army during the Korean conflict or the war, and it was in Colorado, and one of my jobs was to interview former prisoners in Korean prison camps.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. This is a story.
Well, it brings up the whole idea of synchronicity that we're all tied together somewhere, and I see that every day of my life,
So I've been at this interview. I've been at this interviewing game for many, many years.
Okay.
Like 50 or 60, I don't know. But anyway, I don't know if did you say you talked to a lot of prisoners?
No, I did not. It was totally out of my own head that I created it. But go ahead, Bob.
Some of the things that I've found out from them, I'm assuming they're true. I mean, I had to accept, whatever they told me.
Sure.
But there was this. They used to do a lot of things like they would play volleyball without a volleyball or without a net and so forth.
You're right.
They were trying to, stay normal, but they were also trying to get into the heads of the guards. The Korean guards.
I guess after a while you begin to see volleyballs in the air, right?
Really? But then
you mean
the guards used to come and wake them up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And one morning, they did this a few times, I guess. One morning, they all got up at 4, and they got dressed and everything, and some were playing cards on the bed, some were, reading a book, and they were all doing something when the guard turned on the light.
Wow, that's funny.
Well, it's a passive resistance. They had to do something, right?
But then there was one guy that went around because they had quite a bit of freedom in the prison camp there, according to what these guys said, and they all had their own officers. There was an American officer that took charge of the group of prisoners in a certain barracks or whatever. Mm-hmm. So there was this one fellow that he used to go around the prison area pretending he had a motorcycle. So he was going brrr, 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 wherever he went. He was riding a motorcycle, but they called him in to interview him or interrogate him on something else.
Yeah.
The
Korean guards.
Yeah.
And so when the commanding officer of the American commanding officer came to pick him up, after the interrogation. Then they said, he said to the prison guards, he said, what about his motorcycle? And they said, we're going to keep that.
watch The Great Escape and relate to it, right?
Well, they had to do something to keep active, to keep their sense of humor, huh?
Of course.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Humor,
and then they were
critical.
They were trying to get into the heads of the guards.
That is really good.
So anyway, those are three of the stories I remember. There were probably some other ones. And what I would do is I'd record those, and then I'd send them to the hometowns.
Oh, yeah.
To the radio stations and that.
Yeah.
So they could hear those things.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you wrote a book on that same subject.
Yeah. Slightly different twist, but I did write a book about the subject and put the POW squarely in the realm of trying to get back, other people using them to try to get back to the United States, Yeah.
Yeah.
These books are all available on Amazon and also Author House that I use to publish the books, too.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
and of
good.
course, you know that Sebastian has en route books and media, right?
Oh yes, I do. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So the other thing that
go ahead.
Last week I mentioned that, and it was hard for me to explain because I think for lack of a better explanation, a word of knowledge. Remember when my Carmelite sister passed away, and I had shared that I had this knowledge of her going through the tunnel with the light, and the Carmelites were on both sides of her, greeting her, all happy and joyous.
Right.
So that was like I shared that Monday. Wednesday we went to the funeral, and of course some of us Carmelites were there, and also she belonged to the Legion of Mary.
Right.
Well, before they brought the casket in, Father lined us up on each side of the aisle going down with the candle burning. And as we stood there, it dawned on me. I said, "Wait a minute, this is basically what I had the word of knowledge about." And I said, "That means one thing. What is behind the candle?" And that's the altar, which is a piece of heaven.
Yeah.
You see. I mean, it was pretty incredible. And I speak, when I share these things, being a sinner myself, I just wanted to bring out to people, God speaks to us in different ways. And for you, Bob, you're using this media, writing your books. Interesting.
Yes.
What's the third book going to be about?
It's going to be about the Baja again, but it's going to be about post-traumatic stress disorder and a couple of different soldiers that end up in the Baja. But also tied back to the dog pack at the chapel too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, our Carmelite sister, before she passed, I talked to her son at the wake, and he did mention that she was speaking to somebody. She came out of a semi-coma, was speaking to somebody, and then she says, toward the end, several times, praise Jesus, as she departed at 9:15 on January 13th. Isn't that amazing?
Wow. That is amazing.
It reminds me of St. Therese of Lisieux.
Yeah.
She was dying of tuberculosis, and then at the end, she just sat up and said, my Jesus, or something in regard to that. That's beautiful.
As they say, people die the way they lived, Yeah. So it's just a continuation of your life's history, Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share that.
When I was sitting in adoration one day, it seemed like the Lord was saying to me, nothing to worry about. He said, when you go to heaven, you're just going to change your address. what he's saying.
Wow,
What's that?
That's funny. Bob, what was that?
That's what he seemed to be saying was that's all. You're just going to change your address. That's all.
A lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The great truths have great simplicity to them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a message from Medjugorje. It's dated January 7th. And it's, I had mentioned Bill O'Keefe, who puts out a lot of these messages around the world. This particular one is from a lady in Medjugorje. And it's just a statement first. What she says is, quote, "Forgiveness is trusting God is to be the ultimate and perfect judge. He knows how to settle our disputes much better than we do."
Right.
And then she goes on to Mirjana, who's one of the seers over Medjugorje, and I'm just going to read what she says. "Dear children," this is the Blessed Mother speaking, of course.
Right.
"Dear children, my son was the source of love and light when he spoke on earth to the people of all peoples. My apostles follow his light. This is not easy. You must be little. You must make yourself smaller than others with the help of faith to be filled with his love. Not a single person on earth can experience the miraculous experience without faith. I am with you. I am making myself known to you by these comings, by these words. I desire to witness to you my love and motherly care. My children, do not waste time posing questions to which you never receive an answer. At the end of your journey on earth, the Heavenly Father will give them to you. Always know that God knows everything. God sees, God loves. My most beloved Son illuminates lives, dispels darkness, and my motherly love, which carries me to you, is inexpressible, mysterious, but real. I am expressing my feelings to you, love, understanding, and motherly benevolence. Of you, my apostles, I am asking for your roses of prayer, which need to be acts of love. To my motherly heart, these are the deepest prayers. I offer these to my Son, who was born for your sake. He looks at you and hears you. We are always close to you. This is the love which calls, unites, converts, encourages, and fulfills. Therefore, my apostles, always love one another, and above all, love my Son. This is the only way to salvation, to eternal life. This is my dearest prayer, which fills my heart with the most beautiful scent of roses. Pray always, pray for your shepherds, that they may have the strength to be the light of my Son. Thank you. Now, when she mentions the apostles of Mirjana, who's actually been visualized, seen her since 1981, the apostles she makes reference to is all of us, the ones that are trying to get on the path to heaven. And so, in being the 100th anniversary of Fatima, which is celebrated this year, we are called to that, to spread the word of God, to get out of the closet, to start spreading, say, Jesus is Lord, Jesus is love, and start correcting the errors that are being spread throughout the world. And we do that with our own family. And we have to be aware that we're going to be attacked within our own family, too.
Yeah.
And, Bob, I think you have a lot of experience with that. Well, at least your dog. I heard your dog in the background. You're after. You didn't tell him to be quiet.
Oh, my God. Oh.
That's funny.
That is funny.
So I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah.
So this is very interesting. I should add, Bob, that you also you've been in the educational thing for what, 52 years now, right? Like, it must be over that.
54 years.
54 years now.
Yeah. They're gonna when I die, they're gonna put me in the wall somewhere, I think.
Yeah. Well, being a Carmelite, I'm not going to hold the Franciscan thing against you. Hey, Mr. Olson, we have to get a Dominican on a second, third order Dominican.
Dominican, right.
Yeah,
I was educated at Providence College, so that's where the Dominicans are. That's where I got my initial education, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we have a group right at Holy Apostles in Cromwell, Connecticut,
Yeah,
right?
we have some, yeah.
Well, Sebastian is a lay,
Dominican.
Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, he's right. That's right.
Wow. Olson, you should investigate that to see if we could bring one of them out so we can get some of the charisms of that. You know, Bob, why don't you speak a little bit about the Franciscan group?
Well, I go to a group in Bristol and Connecticut where ESPN is, the sports channel and all. That's where their central headquarters are. And in any event, they are some of the holiest people I've encountered. I mean, they really, when they pray, they really pray, and they live their lives in a very holy way. And they're giving, they donate to soup kitchens, and all the things you would expect of Franciscans, because Francis Francis literally took off his cloak and gave it to a stranger, because he needed it.
Right.
And it is such a difference between talking about the world, and the world wants more, and the Franciscans want less, because less is better in this case. You get closer to God when you don't have so many things in the way, and they lead that kind of life.
Yeah, and that's what our Carmelites are. I think all the orders, the lay people, if not, we know religious orders do that.
Yeah.
But the lay people are doing that too. I experience the same type of thing. Where the materialism, you're not going to take it with you. So what's the big deal?
Right.
Right. So
it's just something you're holding. As they say also in spiritual direction, life is about letting go and not holding on. And that's what we have to do. And there are a lot of things we can let go of, especially addictions and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, by the grace of God, I stopped smoking and I wasn't drinking and all that. I couldn't do it alone. And I think that's another message that the listeners should know, is that a lot of these things they say, I can do that, I can do that. No, when you start saying I can do it, you're totally incapable. You're believing in yourself, God.
Yourself, right?
And
Those are all.
If you don't have direction, that's bad.
They're all ego statements,
Exactly.
Yeah, they're not God statements. Yeah.
Exactly. How many were in that group, though, Bob?
It's not a big group. It's only about 10 or so, But, But highly, spiritual and giving, etc. I mean, it's like bigger than the sum of its parts, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
and I really get an awful lot from that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it reminds me of I just listened to a CD by Ralph Martin. I think people know who he is. He's been around, and he wrote today. He says, what goes around today is that people think that the road to heaven is very wide and to hell is very narrow.
Yeah.
He says that's exactly the opposite of what Jesus spoke of when he says the road to heaven is very narrow and the road to hell is very wide. It's just the opposite.
Right.
So that's what people should be aware of, and especially today, because these are spiritual battles that are being fought around the world.
Well, and we get bombarded. Our life is so fast-paced that we get bombarded with more temptations, etc., than people used to have years ago. I mean, it's the whole media and the technology offer people any number of temptations. Yeah.
The propaganda, which is a total lies. I mean, we see it on TV and everything. We hear it.
It is total lies.
If you tell a person, they're not loved, enough times they're going to believe it. That's right. That's what they do. Propaganda is a very strong media, you know. So
we are here. You know what Franciscanism also is very strong on? We're here not for ourselves, but we're here for each other, to help each other get to heaven, you know? And people, when they go their own way, they forget that, you know, and it hurts usually their families first and everybody else, you know.
Yeah, especially the families, I know. Sometimes, you know, when you're on the path, you wish you could bring everybody with you, and you try and strive for that, but
I know.
There's a lot of resistance. And that's a cross that we bear trying to follow Jesus, you know.
I know.
It's one of those things, and there's a lot of times you can't do much. Well, what you do is you put that situation or that person at the foot of the cross of Jesus. This is yours. I tried what I tried to do, but it's beyond you. You got to do this. We're fully knowing that a prophet is never recognized in their own home.
That's true.
So
that's very true.
I can tell my child or anybody this, they're not going to believe me. So what I've learned over the years is to have one of my friends tell one of my daughters or anybody in my family, you tell them, because they're not going to listen to me. And then suddenly go, oh, I didn't know that. You know, that seems to work. Yeah, and I have a bunch of good friends that tell me exactly where I'm going wrong. I'll tell you. Thank God. So, what else
Tony,
is there about?
Tony, when you led off with about the spiritual warfare, you said a lot of things are happening. What were you thinking about? What made you say that today?
Well, we see what's happened politically, and I don't generally like to get into it, but there's such a big battle going on politically about people. People have, I don't know if you watch TV, but they're so angry at what just happened in the United States and in England. They don't get that the Holy Spirit is working in a very powerful way to reverse what's going on. And righteousness is going to win over the darkness. But people, when I get into a discussion about that, and they go really crazy, I automatically pull way back, and I look at them and I say, why are you so upset about this? Because it goes so far beyond the individual, because satanic, it's Satan. And I've been able to recognize that right away. And so I look on TV and I see these people acting a certain way, and I'm saying, you know, that's not really the human what God made. That's being possessed. You know, you should always, you know, try to take care of your wealth. You know, if you go crazy over something, that's not right. You know, it's just not right.
No.
You know,
it's about balance. Life is all about balance, you know.
Oh, yeah. But we've experienced and we've seen what's going on. It's like over the edge. It's crazy. And having some experience with healing and stuff with Father Ralph DiOrio up at Worcester, Massachusetts, who has a gift of healing. I've witnessed the tones that come out of demonic tones, voices come out, and I'll tell you something. I've been seeing that on TV lately.
Yeah,
and it's a battle. It's a big battle. But you know what? We're going to have to pick up. Yeah, we pick up our cross and we go forward, Bob. Right?
Right. I know. Yeah.
By the way, if you gentlemen are not familiar with it, the President Trump has already carried out 3 of his campaign promises that he really pushed, and one was the Mexico thing on abortions, which
I saw that.
Cut off federal funds for abortions internationally.
Yeah.
And what happened there is that Bush had signed off on that when he became president, but then when Obama took over, then he put the abortion thing back in effect. So it's been the Democrats have been taking it off.
Yeah.
And the Republicans are putting it back on. So that was one of them. And then the other one was the Pacific Rim, which they're trying to bring jobs back to American workers.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they said Bernie, what's the vice president?
Bernie Sanders?
They say that he was in favor of getting rid of the trade agreement with China on the Pacific Rim, and then Hillary, when she found out that he was against it or for getting rid of it, she also changed her mind on it. So it's been kind of that's the one good thing. It was kind of bipartisan there.
Yeah.
That's what they said.
Yeah.
So we're seeing some good signs, though, Tony.
Oh, I think so. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to get these products made in the USA. I understood. I was told by knowing some people that work for Pratt Whitney. They said some of the F-16 parts are made in China. They go, what?
Jeez. My God.
Made in China? I mean, just think of that. So we have a little dispute with China, and the first thing they do is cut off the parts for our jets. I mean, it's so
not to mention all the water rights in the United States that have been sold to China. That's a whole other story.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of work to do.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just at the cross of beginning all that stuff.
Now, the Holy Father.
Yeah.
We're going to see. I think that what Trump is doing and what he said is all going to come true. I think and we're going to see how deeply involved we were and how important it was to shed so many things.
Yeah, one of the Ned Doherty has been getting inspired, prophesizing all the stuff that's coming out. I found interesting too was I saw a thing about Nostradamus even predicted that in this time period, a guy by the name of Trumpet, he called it a trumpeted, would come to power, in that the Queen's purse will be opened and revealed as to what was inside. And I just said, wow, that's the emails. Yeah. And I said, trumpet is Donald Trump. I don't think he plays a trumpet, but because he couldn't put it together. Just like he mentioned like locusts, the big war with locusts. Well, the locust really is the Huey helicopter. When you see a batch of them coming at one time, that's your locust, because he couldn't describe it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. See, he had such a gift.
Yeah.
Bob, you had
I know.
So you had something to say?
Just the Holy Father, of course, he was praying for Trump when he heard that he was elected president. But someone asked him, what did he think of the inauguration, or what did he think of Trump and so forth. He said, well, he wants to hold his judgment. He wants to wait and see. And that's good. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want to get too excited, and he doesn't want to get down. In other words, he wants to see how things are going to shake out, and then he's going to make his judgment then.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we hold reservations, but from his acceptance speech once he was sworn in, and he just basically said in front of all of them, this is all going to be corrected. I thought that was very powerful.
It is
to
powerful.
Stand in front of the ones and just said, I'm shutting you down. We're going to do it, the people in power. And that's exactly what happened. You think about what was happening in Washington, D.C., about the little, I don't know, the little cliques that they had, the groups that they belonged to, the things that they did. What were the things that were hidden?
Yeah.
That will be exposed now.
That's right.
Yeah. It's like...
Yeah. Well, listen, gentlemen, I have to get going here, okay?
Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us.
Okay, and I'll talk to both of you later, okay?
All right, always good to talk to you.
Yeah, God bless. Tell Pastor you said hi. All right, bye-bye. So, Mr. Olson, how you doing?
I've been busy. We had Natalia on from Rome at 2:00 today.
Yeah.
And then at 4, I had the bereavement miracles with, and that's amazing how Mike Frey came up with that 12-step program that he patterned it after the 12-step in AA for bereavement sufferers. And that's
right.
at 4:00. Then at 6, I had these two students from Holy Apostles that are online students. They live in Minnesota, and they're putting together a journal called Dedicate, which is going to make it possible for this Catholic wisdom that's kind of under a bushel basket, as one fellow said in the world. They're going to open it up, and it's going to become a light. These are two young men that do a lot of youth work, and they have some beautiful ideas for working with youth. And of course, you said that's how you got started.
Oh yeah. Well, that's you know how that really. Did I share that? I'm not sure I shared that. How that came about.
You shared about how you used to go down to Father Bill's, and you also had that other place where you did retreats for young people.
Right. In New Hartford, Trinita was the one in the fall. In Thanksgiving, we did a work retreat at my father's house, retreat center in Moodus, Connecticut. But I don't know if I shared how that happened with the ministry. I got involved at St. Pius X in family council. Did I share that before?
I think so, but let's hear some more.
So anyway, so being the youngest person there and raising two girls, they wanted me to do the youth group, and I fought. I said, no, I don't want to do youth group. I don't know that much. I don't know anything about it. So they kept after me I think it happened about 6 months. So in the middle of the night, and I always say around 3:00 because it seems I got to wake up to say the Divine Mercy and that sort of thing. I hear this one word, now, and I knew from previous experience it was our Lord's calling, His voice. And I go, what Lord? What now? And He said, youth group. I says, Lord, I'm not doing youth group. And He goes, now youth group. I says, I'm not doing it. He says, now youth group, now youth group, now youth group. And it went on for a long period of time. I finally, gave in. I says, all right, I'll do it. So the next day, I went up to my parish, to the priest, and I told, I forget who, Karen, I think it was Father Karen, and I told him the story, and he started laughing. He says, I've got the perfect priest we get assigned to the group. I said, who's that? He says, Father Don Inkerman or something like that, So I said, okay. So I met with Father Don. Father Don says, I don't want to do youth group. So I said, neither do I. I said, but this is what happened. So he laughed, and he says, okay, why don't we put a fleece out there? I says, what do you mean a fleece? He says, if 5 or more kids show up for the first meeting, then we do it. If it's under 5, we're not. I says, okay. So we left it up to God. The first meeting, 6 kids showed up, and we did it for 6.5 years, 13 retreats. And that was
I think you told us most of that story, but that's God just wouldn't let you go.
He wouldn't let it go, and it is a mystery. It's faith. It really is, because it's mentioned if you have faith of a mustard seed, and we know how small that is, you can move a mountain. It's just like Israel in the world. Israel to me reminds me of the mustard seed. Why is it a nation that small still exists with everybody trying to hate it? There's only one reason. There's only one explanation, and that's God's chosen people. Period.
Right.
That's it. That's right. The reason why they're still there. because all the forces come against them, and they can't do anything about them. You know, and especially now with the new elections, they're going to be even more supported, which is making me happy, because their God, like I've told some other Jewish friends, I said, your God's the same God I have. You know, just remember that. Mm-hmm. You know.
Yeah, I was trying to think of another example of someone that, well, I know Richard Rohr. He never wanted to do youth ministry or, you know, work with the youth, and the same thing happened to him. It just was there. But the thing that these fellows said tonight when I interviewed them, they said that the average life of a you said you went 6 years. But the average life of a youth worker, a youth minister, is 18 months.
Really?
Yeah, that's what they said.
We did. Wow.
Because they said, and they're youth workers, both of them, and they're working on master's degrees at Holy Apostles online. Okay.
Wow.
So they don't come to the campus. They're doing it in Minneapolis, or in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And but that's, like they said, that's not good. And they said we have to open up this whole situation with youth ministers, and to train them better and give them more support, and because that's the only way we're going to get the kids back.
Well, what we did was we, you know, of course, being in a ministry, the first thing that the priests want to do is, well, you've got to teach them about the Bible, this, that, and the other thing. I said, no, I refuse. Well, what do you mean? I said, no, I want to teach them Christian action, how you become a Christian through their action. They're going to get the other training later. They get it through CCD, and they were raised with that. But now we have to put what we learned to use. And I tell you, we've had circumstances that were amazing, like things got lost, and then the accusations, oh, it was stolen, blah, 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 blah. And then it was revealed something was lost in the couch, you know, a watch, for instance. Yeah. And then we had to talk about, you know, and then of course John Campbell, a close friend of us, he started with us because he was the young, you know, I had to get somebody young in there, closer to the kids' ages than me, you know. And John was man for that. Well, John started way back when. He's still doing it. He's a chaplain, the director of the Manford House over at Central Connecticut State University. He's been doing that for years now, over 20 years.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so he was with us, and then he went to the Bridgeport Diocese, and then he wound up in the Hartford Diocese, and he's still currently doing it. So, and he does a lot of the work with the youth at Appalachia, you know, where they start helping the poor down there. So, and not only that, but one of the youth that we had in our group, he was this past Sunday, helping out with his ministry, collecting money for bingo. So that's good to see that, you know, so that they, you know, they're starting to participate in the church itself. So it's good. It's healthy.
And what these young men are doing is they're starting to, with the young people, to tell them about Thomas Aquinas and all the work that he did to prove that God is real.
Yeah.
That there is a God. And they're coming back to that idea of our Catholic wisdom.
Yeah.
And he was telling about this. He says, and the kids are eating it up.
They're hungry, Bob. They're hungry.
They're hungry for the truth.
And not only them, but the adults are, because when we meet after prayer, after Mass on Saturday, there's four of us that meet.
Yeah. And
we talk, and sometimes we're a little loud, and we have to apologize for being loud, and the people say, no, we want to hear that.
That's right.
So they want to hear the truth. They want to hear what's going on in the world, because they're not connected.
I think I told you that I was having breakfast with someone one day at Denny's over in Middletown, and there was a lady with her son that was sitting across the aisle, or across the what do you call it, between the booths.
Right.
But so when she got up to go, she came over to our table and she said, "It's so wonderful," because we were talking pretty loud too. I didn't realize it. We weren't trying to talk loud, but we just
you
happened.
get excited about it.
So she says, "It's just good to see people who are not afraid to talk about their faith."
Yeah.
And she was excited.
Well, this is the year where we have to do the outreach. You know, you really have to, you just got to carry that cross. You just got to do it. You can't put that light, and you are the light, under a bushel basket. Otherwise, what's the purpose of the light? You got to evangelize.
That's right. They told these young fellows in St. Paul, they're told about this girl that they gave her all this philosophy and a lot of Thomas Aquinas, and proved to her that there is a God. And she got all excited, and she went to talk to her sister. She was talking to all the other girls, and she got quite a few conversions. Just her.
I think that one miracle in Buenos Aires, Argentina, with the miracle of the Eucharist, is a very powerful thing. It's online. You look up Miracles of Argentina, and once you see that, I think that it makes its own statement. It's been scientifically proven that that's the actual body and blood of Jesus Christ.
Yep.
You know, once you see that, and they did the study that they did was pretty intense with the top people, and it's they compared it. That happened in '96, and they compared it with another miracle that occurred with the Eucharist back in 1,200 years before that, down in Italy. And they found that the Eucharist and the blood type were identical, and this is what stood out, and it was from a living heart recently taken. And they even the scientists told what part of the heart it came from, and that was the part that keeps the person alive. That's what makes the heart tick, he said. Yep. He knew exactly where it was. So I said, how much proof do you need? I mean, we have a lot of miracles. We have the tilma, and over 400 years old. A tilma is made out of a cactus plant, where they pull the strands out and they dry it, and then they weave the tilma. They make a little tilma, which is like a cloak. And the average life of that tilma is 30 years. And in Guadalupe, Mexico, it's over 400 years old. And when they expected the image itself, they don't know what makes the image. It's not a paint. They don't know what it is. And when a optometrist looked into the eyes, he was stunned to find that the eyes are living eyes, and that the reflection of the people that were in the room at the time of that miracle was visible. Well, what blew me away was not only was it visible today, but back then it wasn't. But yet in the church that they built in honor of Our Lady up on the hill where she first appeared to Juan Diego, there's a huge painting, 3 feet by 5 feet, of the people that were in the room. And it was identical to the image in the eyes. And I'm saying, how did they do that? They didn't have the technology to see that. Yet, when they put a stethoscope to the heart, they heard 120 beats per minute. Today, they can still hear that, which is the heartbeat of a baby boy. And then this just goes on and on and on. But the thing that people have to be challenged is, I don't expect anybody to believe me, but I do expect them to prove me wrong. Go find out for yourself. You think it's a bunch of hogwash and all that? Go prove me wrong. I'd be more than willing to listen to you. You know, because in the search of truth, you're in the search of trying to disprove it, you're going to find the truth. Like what happened to Scott Hahns, who was this Jewish guy setting out to prove that the Pope was in error. And that search led to his conversion to Catholicism.
That's right. That's right.
So that part of it, you know, is a thing. You know, I was taught law that way. The circuit judge who taught the course, a business course in law, would give an assignment saying, "Okay, come back and tell us how you would try to beat this law." That was your assignment. How can you beat this law? And I thought that was just absolutely brilliant. Because in order to beat the law, you got to know what the law is.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, and that's the same with the truth. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's all around us, Bob. We see it more and more. And this year's going to be a real deciding year. We're going to see a lot of changes to the good.
Yeah, we're off to a good start. The Lord's given us another chance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah?
You know. Let's see. I was going to, you and I were talking about, over coffee the other day about accountability. You know, like what, this group that you have now, you guys kind of pretty much tell what happened after Mass on Saturdays usually, right?
Yeah, we meet for breakfast, and it's like a little Christian group, you know, and we just talk about world events and current things that are happening and messages that we heard, around. And, you know, like Bob Malafante, I think you know Bob.
Oh, yes.
He would bring he gets these CDs with Lighthouse, you know, which is located out of Florida. Right. And he keeps us current with that, which is really good. They're very informative. And the last one he gave us was with Ralph Martin, which I thought it was an excellent CD. You know, he did a real good job. So if anybody has the opportunity to get it, go to lighthouse.com, I believe, and look up Ralph Martin. And he speaks about a whole bunch of topics, you know. So it's good stuff, really good stuff. And Bob yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, Bob Sizemore too is another one that you can get his book. The first book he wrote was for Douglas, A Final Word on the Korean War. Excellent book. He's a good writer. It's an easy read. And of course, the second one is the Franciscan Desert Pack. And he you know, even though it's a fictional thing, he brings the dogs into like people in situations that we know of, you know.
Yeah. So. A very interesting technique.
Yeah, he's also my wife's spiritual director too. I should add that too.
Good.
He's got Bob speaks from experience. He's a 64 graduate of Providence College and has attained his master's degree, 3 master's degrees for education, sociology, and counseling. He's been an educator for 54 years, which he said today, and currently an professor in sociology. So he's been a psychological therapist for 30 years, a spiritual director for 10 years. Well, it's probably 12 years now. Graduate of the famous Writers' School in Westport, Connecticut. And he completed his program for Toastmasters, public speaking. And he's a secular Franciscan, of course, he mentioned that, third in the Catholic Church. And he's got a lovely wife, Barbara Sizemore. And he goes on and on and on. He's funny. He doesn't crack the jokes here, but he's really learned with the jokes, too. He's always got one for me every time I talk to him.
Oh, yeah. Every time you talk to him, he's got one for you, huh?
Oh, he always does. So I'm trying to hook him up with him with Bill O'Keefe, who sends out all the messages that are funneled through him to a number. He's got just a whole listing of a bunch of people he sends them out. He tried to give that up, and I said, you can't give it up. He said, it's a lot of work. I said, you can't give it up. It's your cross. Don't give it up. We need you. We need you. We need you to do this. He said, a lot of people don't believe a lot of this stuff.
That's one good, when you have a group like that you can give him encouragement, which he needs.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yes, but especially today, because we're going to see some big changes. And, so some of it's very personal, something within the family and everything. And I just pray, boy, I tell you something. We're under some severe attacks, but at the same token, I see the light at the end of the tunnel, as they say. You know? So by God's grace, that we continue.
Well, thank you, Messenger, and we will see you again next week, same time, same station. You said that we're trying to get Bill O'Keefe, your friend, on the program one of these days, so that'll be good. And
if I can put him into the station, then hopefully he'll come.
Okay, good. So why don't you close with a prayer, okay?
Yeah, we can say the Hail Mary. How's that?
Okay.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee.
Lord is with thee.
Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb,
Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Amen.
And thank you. God bless.
May everybody be blessed. Everybody that's listening, everybody all over the world be blessed today, because God loves each and every one of us. So be blessed. Be blessed and accept it. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.